5 astronauts put on their spacesuits on June 5th. They were ordered to stop what they were doing, seal their helmets, and climb inside a SpaceX capsule, not for a mission objective, not for a drill, because the station they were living on was leaking. And this time, nobody knew if it could be stopped. Here's what makes this terrifying. NASA knew this was coming. They knew in 2024. They used the words catastrophic failure in an internal meeting and then sent crews up there anyway. Later in this video, I'll tell you exactly what that meeting revealed and why it changes everything you think you know about America's space program. Picture this, 13:04 UTC, June 5th, 2026. Commander Jessica Meir receives the kind of order astronauts train for but hope to never hear. Suit up, shelter in place, prepare for emergency undocking. She and 4 crewmates, Chris Williams, Jack Hathaway, ESA astronaut Sophie Adano, and Russian cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev, move through the ISS corridor toward their docked Crew Dragon capsule. The capsule is named Freedom. The irony is not lost on anyone. 2 Russian cosmonauts stay behind. They're going to try to fix this. Here's the part nobody is reporting. This wasn't a random event. This was the end of a 7-year countdown, and the public was never told the clock was ticking. There's a specific reason NASA kept this quiet for as long as it did, and it connects directly to a failure you've already heard about. One that left 2 astronauts stranded for 9 months. The crack that triggered the evacuation order on June 5th was first detected in 2019. It lives in a small pressure transfer tunnel inside the Zvezda service module, a vestibule called the Perk that connects to the aft docking port. Microscopic fractures in its welds have been growing for 7 years, and NASA's solution every single time was to patch them with tape, with glue, with a 2-component compound called Gurmetal-1 sealant. A space station that cost $150 billion, held together with the aerospace equivalent of a caulking gun. Let that sink in. The Zvezda service module was launched in the year 2000. It is 26 years old. The original design specifications never anticipated the station would still be flying in 2026. Engineers planned for a 15-year operational life. We are now 11 years past that, and the physics of metal fatigue do not negotiate. Stress fractures in pressurized structures don't stop growing because a deadline is inconvenient. They grow every day, every thermal cycle, every docking that rattles the hull. Now here's what that 2024 internal meeting actually contained. NASA officials, not engineers, officials, reportedly described the situation in Zvezda with a specific word. They called it a potential catastrophic failure. In aerospace, catastrophic doesn't mean significant. It doesn't mean concerning. It means unrecoverable. It means the event from which you do not return. They used that word in 2024, and they kept flying crews up there. And on June 5th, 5 of those crew members had to flee into a lifeboat capsule while cosmonauts attempted a repair that had to be paused because the problem was worse than expected. 2 leaks were confirmed inside the Perk tunnel. Russian cosmonauts sealed one with sealant. The second, Roscosmos paused the operation to assess, and these are NASA's exact words, more measurements and data. They paused in the middle of a station-wide emergency because they hit something they hadn't planned for. When the repair was suspended, the sheltering astronauts were called back out of the Dragon, not because the crisis was over, because it was too complex to resolve in a single day. 1 leak patched, 1 leak open, and a timeline nobody is willing to put in writing. But there's a pattern here that demands to be named. Cast your mind back to 2023. Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams boarded a Boeing Starliner capsule for an 8-day mission. They came home 9 months later because the vehicle had helium leaks, because thruster failures multiplied during flight, because NASA had approved a spacecraft that wasn't ready. And while they were stranded, the agency kept releasing reassuring statements, right up until it pulled them off that capsule and admitted it couldn't fly them home safely. The Starliner crisis and this ISS crisis are not separate events. They are symptoms of the same institutional failure: aging hardware, schedule pressure, and a growing gap between what the agency tells the public and what it actually knows internally. In 2024, they knew. They said catastrophic, and they kept flying. Here is the moment where everything changes. The ISS is scheduled for retirement in 2030, 4 years from now. The deorbit plan assumes the station holds together until then. It assumes the Russian segment cooperates. It assumes no crack accelerates before a replacement is ready. None of those assumptions look solid right now. And if the ISS has to be abandoned early, if the pressure in Zvezda drops faster than expected, if the next inspection reveals more fractures, America loses its only permanently inhabited outpost in space. Not for months, for years, because the commercial replacements are not ready. Axiom Space's modular station, Blue Origin's orbital reef. These projects exist, but the first full commercial platform capable of hosting a permanent crew isn't expected before 2028 at the earliest, and that timeline has already slipped twice. There is a gap forming, a window where the United States has no home in orbit, and it widens every time a cosmonaut reaches for sealant and hopes it holds. Think about what fills that gap. China's Tiangong space station has been fully operational since 2022. It is young, it is functional. International researchers who can't get time on the ISS are already applying to work on Tiangong. If the ISS goes dark early, that shift accelerates. Scientific access, geopolitical influence, the precedent of who leads in human spaceflight, these things don't stay neutral when a vacuum forms. They redistribute. And right now, they are redistributing toward a station that has no unresolved cracks in its transfer tunnel. Consider what we lose on the ground. The ISS hosts medical research that can only be done in microgravity, pharmaceutical studies, and protein crystallization work with direct applications for disease treatment. It monitors Earth's surface with instruments that feed into climate models and disaster response systems. It is the primary testbed for every long-duration spaceflight technology required to reach Mars. Lose the station before a replacement is ready, and it isn't just astronauts who feel the impact. The scientific pipeline, the one that quietly produces things that end up in your medicine cabinet and your weather app, goes dark with it. What happens next depends on two things: whether Roscosmos can seal that second crack in a way that actually holds, not for 6 months, but for 4 years. And whether this incident triggers the broader structural inspection of the Russian segment that engineers have been quietly calling for. That segment contains more aging welds, more slow-growing fractures, more 7-year-old problems accumulating in modules that were never meant to still be flying in 2026. If that inspection happens, and right now nobody is saying it will, what it uncovers may not be reassuring. NASA has not issued a timeline for the second leak. It has confirmed that crew members are back to planned operations, which is technically true. It is also true that one crack remains open, that the station is 11 years past its design life, and that the agency described this exact scenario as potentially catastrophic less than 2 years ago. Remember what I said at the start? NASA used the word catastrophic in that 2024 meeting and told the public nothing. What we are watching now is the consequence of that silence colliding with reality. You can patch a crack, you can seal a tunnel, but you cannot patch 7 years of institutional decisions that chose reassurance over honesty. That bill is coming due, 420 kilometers above everything we know. So here is what I want to hear from you. NASA knew, Roscosmos knew, both agencies kept the public in the dark. At what point does that risk belong to all of us? Not just the astronauts who volunteered for it. If you'd been told in 2024 that a crack on the ISS was potentially catastrophic, would you have kept sending people up? And do you think we will hear the full truth about that second unresolved leak before we're forced to? The station that connected nations, hosted 1,000 experiments, and gave humanity its first permanent foothold in space. It's cracking, quietly, persistently, the way old things do when they've been held together by will and sealant for longer than anyone planned. And somewhere above us right now, 7 people are going about their day, trusting that the institutions below them are being honest about what comes next.